Welcome back. Today I am here to start a brand new book with you, and I am so excited, not just because it's got a cute little dog on the cover, but this book is called Almost Home, and it's written by a woman by the name of Joan Bauer. Now, I have a ton of her books in my classroom, and I seem to buy one every single Scholastic Book Fair or every single Scholastic Book Order. And she is a Newbery Honor winning author. And this book, again, while it has a cute little dog on the front cover, has a kind of sadness to it. I'm going to read the back for you. It's about a little girl and her mom and her dog Shush. Sugar May Cole doesn't often get downhearted, but lately it's been a struggle to keep up her spirit. Newly homeless, Sugar and her mother Reba have come to Chicago to make a fresh start. When Reba has a serious breakdown, Sugar and her beloved rescue dog Shush are put into foster care. I feel I've got a sign across my forehead that everyone sees. Homeless girl. But Sugar still has a link to her old life through her former teacher, Mr. Bennett, who encourages her to write, pouring her feelings into heartfelt poems that mirror her fear and confusion, but also her dreams and her faith in people. Sugar comes to understand that home is a place that you carry in your heart. Now, I know that they have closed the brick and mortar side of schools and that we're online learning, but my school is a home for me. It's a family. It's a lot of things, and I feel like I'm going to be able to relate a lot to Sugar as far as her being displaced and a sort of sense that her home is in her heart. So just because I'm not with my work family, with my kiddos, that they always have a place in my heart and that they are always with me. Mr. Brown, my principal, keeps quoting Mrs. Suddeth, one of our interventionists, and she has said many, many times, school is not a building, school is people. So I have those people in my heart always, and they are with me always, even when we cannot be together at school at our second home. So I'm here today to read you the first couple chapters of Almost Home. Let's get started. There we go. Chapter 1. Mr. Bennett walked into room 212 carrying a plastic bag. He smoothed his sweatshirt that read, "Death to Stereotypes," tucked Klaus, his rubber chicken, under his arm, raised one eyebrow, and jumped on his desk. He opened the bag, lifted a loaf of bread into the air, and shouted, "Sell it to me." He threw the bread on the desk. Peyton Crawler let his eyes go back into his head like he'd been dead for years. Harper Willem hollered, "It's good for you." Everyone in 6th grade English groaned. Mr. Bennett shook his head. "It has to be more than that." "You're hungry," Katie Nesbitt said. Mr. B shrugged. I see where he's going, so I raised my hand. "Do you like toast?" Peyton Crawler smirked. "That's stupid." "Go back to being dead, Peyton." "As a matter of fact," Mr. B announced, "I love toast." I pressed in. "With peanut butter and jam?" He pulled down his orange wool hat and grinned. "Strawberry jam." I had what I needed. I ran up and grabbed the bread. "Then I can tell you that this bread," I looked at the label, "Aunt Fanny's homemade honey bread makes the best toast in the universe." Mr. Bennett jumped off his desk and looked at the price. "It's expensive." "It costs more because it's better," I told him, "and you can freeze half of it and only use it when you want toast. It'll make you so happy you won't be able to stand it." He walked to the huge bee that hung on the wall behind his desk. The Great Bee, he called it. "Sold!" He slammed Klaus on the desk. "Rubber chickens don't mind." Why did she sell me? Kids looked at each other clueless. Mr. B twirled Klaus in the air. "These are golden lessons from my checkered career in advertising. Think, what did Sugar do?" Mr. Bennett was in advertising for 15 years and made real decent money, but he gave it all up to teach the 6th grade. Katie raised her hand. She had to learn about you before she could sell you the bread. That's right. She persuaded me. She formed an argument to convince me. He stood in front of the smaller bee on the wall, the not-so-great bee. So when you are trying to sell someone something, an idea, a loaf of bread, whatever, find out what that person is about. Mr. Bennett held up an ad with a picture of a cool-looking singer standing by a piano. What's wrong with this picture? He asked us. Simon looked. There's nothing wrong with it. Look closer, Mr. Bennett suggested. Carrie said, I love her dress. Mr. Bennett looked at the ad. Nice dress. I said, she's holding a cigarette in her left hand. You don't see it at first. Mr. Bennett nodded. And why is that? They're trying to show us that smoking is cool, Carrie said. They're trying to manipulate you, Mr. Bennett said. Your mind takes in the photo. You don't notice the cigarette at first, if ever, but it's there. They want us to smoke, I said. That's right, and my mind went to Mr. Leland, my father, who looked so good in so many ways, being handsome and funny and seeming to love life, but in his left hand there was always a losing hand. Persuasion is an art. It can be misused or it can be powerful. Tonight I want all of you, including the dead among us, Mr. B threw Klaus into Peyton's lap, to write a stirring paragraph on one way you have seen persuasion misused. An advertising campaign, something on the internet, something in your life. Specifics are found on thegreatbknowsall.com. I wondered if I should write about Mr. Leland and how he always persuaded Reba to believe he was going to come through for us. I will read the best 3 out loud to class, so work excessively hard on this. Oops, sorry for the shaking camera, guys. I wouldn't want anything about Mr. Leland being read out loud. Harper Willem was giving me her evil eye like she knew all my secrets. I smiled and walked past her. Reba says it's good to smile around people who don't like you. It makes you stronger. I beamed a big one in Harper's direction. She looked disgusted and left the room. I walked up to Mr. B. He was exactly my height, 5 feet 4 inches. His ski cap had dogs on it. Mr. B, I've got something real personal I want to write about, but I wouldn't want the class to hear it. He adjusted his hat. We'll make it so good, it will kill me not to read it out loud. I grinned. I'll try. I stood there because I didn't want to go home. I wished I could tell him all that was happening at my house. I'm not sure how to start writing about it. He leaned Klaus against his coffee mug. Writing about personal things isn't easy, sugar. Try breaking it up into small, manageable pieces. Small and manageable was not at all what my life was like. He looked at me. Are you okay? That depends on how you define okay. I walked home with Misha Moy, my best friend. Her life wasn't small and manageable either. Even when we were a block from her house, we could hear the sound of a bad accordion music carried on in the wind. Misha stopped walking and shook her head. 2 months ago, her family had to rent out her room to Mr. Denton, who played or tried to play the accordion. Misha had to sleep on the couch in the TV room. Her dad got sick and the bills were killing them. We had a lot in common, except that Misha's dad couldn't work because he was sick. Mr. Leland didn't work because he was a gambler. We hadn't had to rent out a room yet. The bad accordion music got louder. A dog started howling. Misha looked like she could start howling. But Reba taught me to be grateful no matter what. I looked up at the blue sky. It's a pretty day, huh? Misha glared at me. If it was raining, he wouldn't be practicing on the porch. I nodded and headed down Pleasant Street, my street, working hard at my gratitude. Reba was always telling me, you take the GR out of gratitude and you've got attitude. Only once did I mention that attitude has 3 T's, not 2. I'm teaching you enduring concepts for living, not spelling, she snapped. Chester, our postman, was pushing his cart down the street. My grandpa, King Cole, was a mailman until the day he died. Mail tells a story, he always told me. A good mail carrier knows what's going on in every house on his route. They know who's paying their bills on time, and they know who's late. Chester looked at me with sympathy and handed me a stack of envelopes, all marked urgent. I hate that word. Only one was addressed to me, or halfway addressed at any rate. It had curly-Q handwriting. Sugar Booger Cole, 14 Pleasant Street, Round Lake, Missouri. I sighed. Sugar isn't the easiest name to be slapped with, I tell you. I was supposed to get named Susanna. I was supposed to get born in a hospital too, but my whole life started as one big surprise when I got born in the back of a Chevy in the parking lot of the Sugar Shack in Baton Rouge in a rainstorm so bad my parents couldn't make it to the hospital. When I popped out and Reba saw that Sugar Shack sign, she felt it was a sign from God. Right then, I got my name. At least God told her to stop at Sugar. Sugar Shack Cole would have been a chore to live with. As for Mr. Leland, he got the thrill of helping me get born, and believe me, he hasn't done squat to help since then. But I was grateful. As soon as I could write, I sent a note to the Chevrolet Company in Detroit, Michigan, and thanked them for making such good back seats that a baby could get born and be okay. That company cared so much, they wrote me back and said that although many babies have been born in Chevrolet back seats over the years, I was the first one they knew of to be named Sugar. Reba says part of why I'm on this earth is to bring a little sweetness into people's lives. And sweet doesn't mean stupid. Sweet doesn't mean weak. I'm not talking kittens wearing sun hats either. I'm talking kindness. You go out there, Sugar May Cole, and you show them what it means to be sweet. I threw the Sugar Booger envelope into the garbage and walked up the path to our house. The yellow paint was cracked and our porch needed repair, but we had hanging flower pots that made up for some of that. Reba was sitting on the porch in a white chair with her pink phone to her ear, clutching the little silver bell on the necklace Mr. Leland had given her last year, right before she kicked him out for the umpteenth time. Mr. Leland got it in Atlanta and called it her Southern Belle. Reba's big desire is to be a fine Southern belle, which is kind of like being a lady on steroids. When Reba clutched that bell, it meant she was ready to pop off and working hard to find her graces. Why, yes, she said into her pink phone. Yes, I know, and I'm terribly sorry we're late again. Her voice went deep Southern now, pouring the words out like hot butterscotch melted in vanilla ice cream. But I'm struggling as it is to pay the rent. Surely, sir, you understand that I can't manage the late fee. Reba clung to that bell like it was her lifesaver, and she closed her eyes. Why, yes, I hope you will be able to resolve this soon as well. You should have a nice day now. She flipped her phone shut and shouted, Honkin' skinflip moron, if his brains were dynamite, he couldn't blow his nose. I wanted to know about the late fee, but I decided not to ask. King Cole always told me, if you've got a good, fair question and you ask it at the wrong time, what do you get? Answer, in trouble. I kissed Reba on the head and went inside to start my paragraph on bad persuasion. It's always good when homework can help you manage a part of your life. Chapter 2. There are people in our lives we cannot trust. One of these people in my life is my father. Is there Gorilla Glue for fathers, I wonder? Duct tape to keep one together. I remember so much and wish that I didn't. All the fights about him borrowing money and never paying it back. All the times he'd play cards for money with me. I was little, but he always won. There was a strange look in his eyes when that happened. Sometimes he'd disappear and not come back for the longest time. He had the gift of persuasion. His voice sounded like he meant every word. His eyes would fill with love, and it was hard to believe he didn't mean what he said. But he didn't. I've learned a lot from having a father like this. One of the big lessons is that you learn about people, not just by the words they say or the promises they make, but by what they do. I want to be the kind of person who does what I say I'll do. I want people to know they can trust me. Mr. B said to write a paragraph. But the words of this poem poured out of me from some secret place. He was going to have to adjust. There was probably lots of poems to write about my father. My grandma, Mr. Leland's mother, used to say, "You'd be respectful of your father, Sugar, for he's been through harder times than you know." I didn't know what those hard times were, other than all the times he's lost money gambling. I asked King Cole how you respect someone you don't trust. Now that's one of the great minds. Now that's one the great minds have been wrestling with for ages. It's not the easiest thing to do. They're all agreed on that. Did they come up with an answer a kid can understand? It just so happens they did. Everyone alive has good parts and bad parts to them. Some people work hard to develop the good parts, and others work hard on the bad. I think we can respect a person's potential, what they could be, but we don't have to like it if they're acting in the wrong way. Do you know what I mean? Like they've got good things inside they don't know how to get at? That's right. They're locked in a drawer, and they can't find the key. He grinned and wrote that down in his notebook. That's good truth, isn't it? And I'm giving you full credit for this one. He wrote some more. This concept was inspired by Sugar May Cole, one of the great minds of our time. I laughed. I am not. It's my book. I say what I believe. He put that in chapter 2 of his autobiography. Upon these truths I stand. King Cole wasn't a real king, but he always felt he had royalty inside. I missed him bad. I did a shadow box of him in school for Inspiration Week. I had him standing by a sunset. The sign by the road read, "Some suns will never set." What does that mean? Peyton Crawler asked, if not too nice. It means he had so much sunshine in him it filled up the sky. I don't get it. I can't help that. King Cole was on chapter 10 of his autobiography when he died. I've read every chapter except number 3, Woman I've Known and Sometimes Loved. I'd just gotten to the part where he met beautiful Marla Monroe at a 7-Eleven in Baton Rouge when Reba yanked it from me. Can I at least read it when I'm older? No, you cannot. I don't know where she hid that chapter. I've looked everywhere for it. The last thing he ever told me was, "It's not fair, but sometimes a kid has to act older than their age. If that happens to you, pray hard about what to do." You hear me? Yes, sir. He took my hand. You're going to fall down in this life. Everybody does. But you be the kind of person who doesn't stay down for long. Get back up on your feet and keep going, no matter what. I will. When he died, I wrote him a thank you note. I wish I hadn't waited to do it. I made a copy of the note at the library, crying at the Xerox machine. Are you all right? The librarian asked me. My grandpa died. Oh, my dear. She picked up a vase with fresh flowers from the return desk and handed it to me. These are for you. Being this was a library, I wasn't sure if I had to return them, so I figured I'd ask. They're for you to keep, she said. That's something coming from a librarian. I took them to the funeral home and put them near King Cole's coffin. He always said when his autobiography came out, it would be front and center at the 4-day book table. Just about everything he told me was right, except for that. I put my thank you note in his coffin before they closed it. Dear King Cole, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me. I think every word you've ever spoken to me is in my heart, and I promise you I won't lose one of them. You took over raising me when my own daddy couldn't do it. You were happy when it didn't make sense, and you showed me how to love life and people. I don't know what I'm going to do without you, but I want you to know I'm going to be the person you always saw in me. I don't know how, but I am. I love you, Grandpa, and I'm going to miss you like crazy, but I'm going to picture you dancing up in heaven having the time of your life. Not everybody gets to live with a true person who's also a king, but I got to. I promise I won't take it for granted. XOXO, Sugar. When we got home from the funeral, I took out my journal and wrote, Today, I'm going to have to act older than I am. I headed across the Iversons' backyard to the path by the ridge that led to Mrs. Pittman's house and my really odd job. It wasn't easy getting this job. Mrs. Pittman called my school looking for a youngster with a good attitude who can do rudimentary tasks. 3 8th graders applied for it who probably knew what rudimentary meant. Me, I was in sixth grader and up for anything. I just needed to make some money. Why should I hire you over an eighth grader? Mrs. Pittman asked. Because eighth graders don't always do what they're told, ma'am. I'm young and still respectful. See that you stay that way. And I got hired right there. I'm 12 now, and for the most part, I've stayed respectful. I walked up the path to the old stone house. Leona, her housekeeper, was sweeping the porch. How is she today? I asked. Leona shook her head and went back to sweeping. I walked in the front door, wiped my feet on the welcome mat that read, "Go away," and walked past her collection of cuckoo clocks. It was exactly 3 o'clock, and all the cuckoos went crazy. Cuckoo, cuckoo! That really fit around here. I knocked on Mrs. Pittman's door. It's me. The children are hungry, she said. I opened the door. Right. I picked up the bag of bread pieces. She looked out the window at the lake. Now you know what to tell them. That you're sorry you haven't been able to spend any time with them, but it doesn't mean you don't care. This is where Misha lost it when she subbed for me. I had a sore throat so bad I couldn't eat. That's right. And you've got the food? I held up the bag of bread pieces. She grinned. And be sure you look for Bessie. I will. Mrs. Pittman believed that Bessie, the sister of the Loch Ness Monster, a famous monster in Scotland, was living at the bottom of Round Lake, just waiting to be discovered. Monsters know how to hide, she told me. You have to watch for signs to see if they're moving. Look for shadows. Look for any movement on top of the water. Okay. I headed outside, walked down the path to the little lake, and threw some bread into the water. The duck swam so fast to get it. Look, you guys, I'm getting paid to tell you this. Mrs. Pittman says she hasn't been able to spend any time with you because she's been sick. But it doesn't mean she doesn't care. This is from her. I tossed more bread in the water, and a dozen ducks went for it, causing ripples everywhere. I sat down on the bank and watched the surface of the lake. Was there a giant sea monster swimming deep down? The first day I came to work for Mrs. Pittman, she told me all about Bessie. She's waiting, Mrs. Pittman explained. Waiting for what? Waiting for her close-up. She is playing us now. I met an official monster once. He wasn't in a lake. He was at my front door. Where's your father? He snarled. He's not here. The man with the big hands cracked his knuckles. Where is he? I don't know. He only stays with us sometimes. I haven't seen him for... You tell your old man this. You tell him I came by, and I'm going to keep doing that until we get paid all the money he owes us. You think you can remember that? You think you can ever forget that, mister? I threw the rest of the bread in the water. Are you there, Bessie? What do monsters eat anyway? Bread? Ducks? Or maybe sixth graders? All right, and that is where I will stop for today. That is the first 2 chapters of Almost Home. Stay tuned for the next few. Bye.